Hey, so before I let this video play out, just gonna let you know now, I don't have any items on my PoE League characters right now, and in Standard they don't have the current League breach, and so I don't have any footage to play. And I would have footage if I had my old computer up and running, but I'm just on a temporary laptop right now until that computer gets fixed. So what I decided is I'll just put some single player Tarkov footage in the background. I've been playing that a little bit recently, so that's what you have in the background. And one other thing, this is literally just going to be a video of me rambling. This is super low effort, but if you just like basically want to hear my thoughts on how things turned out, that's what this is. And I go on for quite a while. There's some things that I miss or didn't want to bring up because it was just depressing type thing. Well, I brought up everything I think is most important, and that's basically all this is. But you can expect every league a video like this, except it will be a lot more detailed and like sort of how the deep dives have like the Google Slides things. I'll have stuff for that. It's just that the setup I have right now is really ghetto. So, and this league also kind of doesn't really deserve much attention or detail. So that's what this is. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. Hope that my thoughts are useful or entertaining. While Keepers of the Flame had its good moments, it was honestly pretty far from being a good league. I honestly think this is the first time since maybe Lake of Calandra that the developers are making very obviously bad changes to the game. GTG has always been a company that's willing to force change on its player base if it's change that they actually believe in. And this has basically always been the case. I always compared them to Apple, like the tech company Apple. They're the same. They force changes on people and usually it works, but sometimes it doesn't. Pretty much any time that it's a major change, it initially feels like it's a bad idea. That's like that's the kind of change I'm talking about. That's not like an obvious W. There's been a lot of times they've changed things that everyone thought was initially bad and turned out to be not bad. And my favorite example is the flask reworks from Expedition League. They drastically reduced the amount of flash charges that you'd get by killing monsters, while also giving us these two Instilling Orb and Enkindling Orb things. And at the time, everybody was pretty pissed because it kind of felt like they were basically saying, yeah, you had 100% uptime on your flask during mapping, and now you don't. And that was sort of true, but not really true. But what ended up happening is over the next however many years in the leagues, we got to a point where our flasks are getting the same amount of charges as they were before Expedition. So now it's literally just the same flask power as back then. I think they also I think they nerfed the suffixes on them too. Like they used to be better than what they are now. But the Instilling Orbs are like one of the best changes they've ever made to flasks, right? Like that's like if you like Mage Blood because you don't like pressing flasks, for example, well, Instilling Orbs kind of made it possible to not have to piano flask, spamming your 1 through 5 keys. So this was an instance of we all thought it was going to be dumb change, but then it turns out like it was really good for the game. So that's an example of like a successful risk that they took. And the truth is, the philosophy that they used to take these risks honestly plays the biggest role in creating the game that we're obsessed with. So it's give and take, and almost everything that we've come to love in the game spawned from a risky decision, essentially. I say all of this just to make a point that GTG takes risks a lot, and it's important, in my opinion, to not feel angry towards them when these risky decisions don't play out in a positive way. But we should, however, make sure that we're giving honest feedback as much as possible, and that's what I'm here to do. So I'll just start. This will be the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Keepers of the Flame League, with the good being, well, the good stuff. The bad things being things that maybe missed the mark or were poorly executed, and the ugly being blatantly bad choices that made the game worse for the majority of its players. And we will, of course, just start with the good. First thing that's really important, everybody will agree, probably the best thing that came with the patch was just the asynchronous trade. in my opinion, is by far the best addition to the game. We've been asking for this feature for over 10 years. It goes without saying it's an amazing change for loads of reasons, obviously. But I'll just point out my personal favorite thing about it is being able to list items and just go and continue playing the game. Like, I didn't really have a problem with like going to people's hideouts with the, or you PM them, go to their hideout, and then you have to trade with them for the uniques. I actually kind of like, or the items. I actually kind of like that experience a little bit, but this didn't really take away from that experience either. You still kind of get the same thing anyway, same feeling. But otherwise, like, that change though for being able to just play the game, making listings, go play the game, and like go to sleep or whatever, and you wake up to money, like that's amazing. It's really nice. It should have been in the game a long time ago, but yeah, everybody agrees probably that that's just like one of the best, if not the best thing in the patch, and we obviously all knew it was coming. So that's big W, async trade. The other thing, or the next thing I like a lot is the Falborn uniques. They're an example of an idea that everyone loved, getting almost a perfect execution. Like we saw these in the trailer, and they turned out to be as cool as we thought they would, basically. There's so many cool and build enabling Falborn uniques in the game. It's sad knowing, though, that they're more than likely not sticking around, or at least the strongest of them will be nerfed or completely removed type situation. Of course, that's just speculation, but it is very much in line with the past. It is more than likely what's going to happen. But yeah, this is like an A+ for the Falborn uniques. And if you're listening, GGG, it would be an extremely easy W for the company and the player base if you literally did not nerf any of the Falborns. You kept all of them in the game as they are. And the only thing that I would suggest changing is just adding even more. Every single person playing the game would be happy that you do that. This is a situation of you can literally just keep the Falborn uniques in the game as they are, and people will be happy that you did. And it's just good for the game. So I really encourage to not overthink things like this. If the player base wants it and it's already been in the game, then you should just keep it. And the next thing is grafts. I think they turned out to be pretty cool. They're not like perfect or anything, but I think they're cool. They offer useful stats and useful abilities, and in some cases they can actually do like a lot for your character. Like for example, the Jolting Esh graft with like a 1% melee damage per 20 int corruption is like absolutely insane on a int accuracy stacking juggernaut. Something like 30 to 40% more damage overall. Just from one graft, it's pretty insane. The only thing I don't like about them is that the crafting is kind of cringe. Whether it's the spawning them out of the tree or doing the actual implant stuff, but I know that other people do it. It's one of those things where like I can't say it's a bad thing, it's just that I don't like it, right? Because it's like running blighted maps, for example, is like content that 95% of the people in the game don't want to do, and that's good for the 5% that love it kind of situation. I like stuff like that being in the game because there's so much stuff in the game that there should be really specialized content like that. So graft crafting was very profitable, and if you could tolerate doing it, you probably made a lot of money, and that's totally good. I love that. So even if I don't like it, it doesn't matter. It's not about me. I think it's good for the game, but these aren't sticking around. Let's be real. Like, these are most likely not sticking around. Another positive is Kinetic Rain, and this is the only skill gem that was added that I can confidently say is actually good and has a place in the game. And basically, this is what Kinetic Rain is. I'll break it down. It's a great skill, and it will be used in the future. But its purpose, I'm very confident in saying that there is no other wand skill in the game that's better for league starting. Like, wanders are like the notoriously worst league start build characters like ever. They're just complete dog shit on day one, and like maybe day two, maybe even longer than that, for many reasons. But even with all these wand changes that they made, that remains the same. However, Kinetic Rain, not the transfigured one, the regular one, felt so smooth the whole time. I never lacked damage. It was good the entire time, all the way up until I'm trying to think. I'm pretty sure I swapped off of regular Kinetic Rain without instacking after 3 Void Stones, or I don't remember actually. It might have been 4, but regardless, I got basically the entire Atlas progression done without ever feeling like I needed to switch skills. It was perfectly fine, and that's great. But obviously at some point, You know, let's say you've spent like 50 divs on your character, Kinetic Blast is going to start becoming the better option because it's still just the best wand skill in the game and it's better at everything. But Kinetic Rain is extremely solid for early game damage scaling when your character's on the weaker side. And but yeah, if that's its purpose in the game, then that's totally fine. Because like a skill like Somatic Shell or Kinetic Bolt or whatever, all these other wand skills, Elemental Hit is one you can use with a wand actually. Those things don't have a purpose in the game. So W for Kinetic Rain, because it has a very good purpose in the game and is a very useful purpose. If you want to league start with wand, it's now extremely easy to do that. So if that's what the destiny of this gem is, and that's where it's gonna end up, just being a league starter skill, awesome. That's fine. It's kind of like Poisonous Concoction, right? It's like, that's great. Those have a place in the game. People like playing it. It's fun. So yeah, Kinetic Rain, honestly, very good. And then the last thing, yes, seriously, this is the last thing in the entire good section, by the way, is the bow skills, the 2 new bow skills. I think I can't say if they're good or bad, but the Thunderstorm one at least looked pretty good and fun. And the other one, the combustion thing, whatever that was, it, I didn't see any builds using it or anything. I don't know how it actually turned out, but it looks like it should work. I don't see why it wouldn't work in some capacity. It might get outshined by other skills, but it's hard to say with that one. I haven't seen anything yet, so regardless, the bow skills seem like they're kind of cool. And there's like the tornado support thing, which I'm sure people have done something with that's cool. But so yeah, now we're moving on to the bad. And remember, the bad doesn't. In this case, it doesn't necessarily mean that GGG fucked up or like made a bad choice necessarily. It's just like sometimes they can't get it right every time. Okay, and a lot of this stuff is just most of the stuff is just like it missed. I'll start with the most important one. This one was really hard to decide whether I wanted to put in the bad or the ugly, which is the Bloodline Ascendancies. I personally feel that the Bloodline Ascendancies were a complete miss and were genuinely badly designed. The only thing that could actually keep me from putting it into the only things, there's two things, for putting it into the ugly is that there's some very good use cases, and I don't know that everyone else hates them as much as I do. So if I'm not being selfish about this and just strictly looking at this from like how other people see it, I assume there's going to be a decent chunk of people that think it was executed well and that they like them. But I do not feel that way. I think that they are a travesty and it's wasted potential. Like, these things were designed in a way that 90% of the nodes available for anyone to play with are picked by literally nobody for any build in the game. Like, they are just bad and useless, and they are just PoE2 type things. And that's a focal point that I'm going to have in this review, is that this game is being PoE2ified right now, and it's not good, and they need to stop doing that. It's literally just the dumbest thing you can do. PoE2 already exists. We don't need PoE2 and PoE1. Stop doing that. But anyway, next thing from the bad, and this is probably the thing that'll be most controversial. I think, I'm willing to bet that the Genesis tree is something that the majority of people would disagree with me on, but I can't stand it, honestly. It has so many flaws. Like, you feel stupid for using Graft Blood on the rares past like day 3, because literally everybody like prints a million of the best base fractured in the game within the first 3 days with this tree. And so that whole section of the tree is basically useless unless you're playing SSF after day 3. So you just eliminated like 1/5 of the tree immediately, 1/5 of its functionality on day 3. So you're left with more or less just the currency uniques and mysterious rewards. I'm not putting grafts in this category of things that you could do because I don't think most people do it, because it's not, like I said, grafting is kind of cringe. But so that leaves you with 3 options basically, and it just kind of, I don't like that kind of thing. You have this big tree, but then like 30% of it is not being used by, or is it 40% of it isn't being used by like 95% of people playing the game. I think that's a design flaw, but regardless, it's just stupid because you like, when you're limiting it to those 3, it makes you frustrated when you drop womb gifts that aren't those 3, and then it's like, okay, you can do the 5 to 1, but here's the problem. Like, this is a really annoying cycle to me. Like, this is the routine, right? You have to collect the Graft Blood, and then you have to collect the womb gifts, and then you have to go to the monastery, And then you have to click the tiny little buttons to use the womb gifts over and over. And when you run out of womb gifts, you want to check your stash to see if you have any you can 5 to 1. So you take them out, you 5 to 1 with Ilith, look to see if you got any that you want, open the tree again, click the buttons again. Like, it's just so it's not fun. It's it feels like a chore. It's like, okay, I'm doing Breach because Breach is worth doing, but only slightly worth doing. So you already feel like kind of annoyed that you're doing Breach in the first place. And then you have this Graf's Blood that is a really, really frustrating and tedious thing to interact with, in my opinion. So it's just like, this is a situation where I think the execution is wrong. Like the Genesis tree as a concept is awesome, but I think that the concept is completely wrong. Like the Genesis tree should literally be something that you can do anywhere in the game at all times. This is like, it's weird. Like, what was it? Scourge League, I think, was like that, where you like baked your items type of thing. Like you could do a system like that for the Genesis tree and it would be fine. But no, they had to design this whole area and it's like, it's cool. The tree is cool and stuff, but it's just, yeah, I don't know. It's just, none of this feels right is the best way of describing it. It just doesn't feel right. But something that I want to point out, this isn't something you probably even thought about or heard about at all. The tree is the number one reason that the Breach ground loot sucks. Because if the Breach ground loot were really good and the tree exists, Breach would be too good. And you know that GGG doesn't, when it's obviously going to be too good, they're not going to make that change. And so because the tree existed, that is the sole reason that the Breach loot never actually got buffed. That is the actual reason. And just keep that in mind. That's another problem I have with the Genesis tree. It's an annoying thing to deal with, and it also kept us from the ground loot being good, which is the actual fun part. So it was literally an anti-fun mechanic, basically, that you could get rewarded for using. Like I dropped 2 Foulborn Headhunters one day, and I'm like, okay, this is great. This tree's like owning. But did I, after that, become more motivated to go use the tree? No, it was still really annoying. I don't know. It's just not a fan of it. But if you like it, that's cool. I hate it. And another thing is the new Breach boss encounter, which I don't have any like footage of or anything, but you've probably seen it. With I think it's Esh and Toll, if I remember correctly, that are fighting. It's okay. It's an underwhelming fight, honestly, and it has a lot of annoying invulnerability phases, which, if you have done a lot of Ubers and stuff or whatever, like, you know how annoying invulnerability phases are for things that aren't that rewarding, right? Like, what did those guys even drop that was worth anything? Because those invitations were worthless. So, like, you're making me do these invulnerability phases just for, like, a boss that's not going to do anything for me. Like, it literally didn't. As far as I know, there was nothing good that could drop from them. But, yeah, I'm just not a fan of them. If you like them, that's fine. I don't like them. The Assassin rework is something I don't think I've seen many people even talking about. It's kind of like it almost got forgotten about because it really isn't anything to remember, actually. It seemed cool to me initially, in principle, but honestly, nothing seems to really have made a splash on Assassin. It just kind of seems overall, it's just a very linear tendency. It's like deceiving, right? Because it looks like it has a lot of options, but it actually doesn't. Like in reality, if you're not doing like crit strike poison with Assassin, then there's not even a reason to play it. And honestly, if you're playing poison, you just shouldn't play Assassin because Pathfinder exists. I cannot actually see the argument for running Assassin poison when you can run Pathfinder, because you could argue, yeah, the damage scaling can be better, but I mean, poison can only go so high, right? It gets dot capped, so it's like Pathfinder can hit dot cap too. So Assassin offers you nothing that the Pathfinder can't do. So except maybe like you get elusive, but I don't know. It's not great. Assassin, by the way, there's like 2 nodes. I don't remember what they do offhand, but it's like the 2 different like crit. It's like crit multi on low life while crit chance on high life. Like you could pick between those 2 things or whatever that thing was. That is a PoE 2ification. Okay. That's a PoE 2 design making its way into PoE 1. That's what that is. Because they both suck, and it's acting like it's a good choice. or a meaningful choice, I mean. Like, they're both complete dog shit, and they're not good for anything. And they're being set up in a way that it's like tricking you into thinking they're good because of the illusion of choice. It's like, it doesn't matter what you pick, they both do nothing. They suck ass. So I I hate that. That's like that's another PoE 2ification. Okay, so that's two things so far. The Bloodline Ascendancies are very PoE 2. The Assassin, some of the new nodes are very PoE 2. Also, I forgot to mention earlier, I think skills like Somatic Shell and Kinetic Rain, or not Kinetic Fusillade are also PoE 2. Those are also PoE 2 concepts. It's very clear to me. Like, that's the design philosophy behind them, is they're PoE 2ified. Speaking of those two skills, Kinetic Fusillade and Somatic Shell, they do not have a place in the game. I've seen people try to make arguments for the Fusillade skill because it has good numbers, and it's like, yeah, it has some good numbers, but it's like one of the clunkiest and shittiest playstyles ever. The way it aims and targets stuff, it's so stupid. If you've played with it, you already understand what I'm talking about. If you haven't played with it, just don't even bother. You're not going to like it. It's like, imagine, it's almost like you're playing, I don't know, like, imagine you're like putting down Mirage Archers all the time, except your AoE sucks and the targeting sucks. It's just like weird. It doesn't work in PoE 1. It's just a PoE 2 skill. And as for Somatic Shell, that gem just doesn't do anything. I actually don't understand what it's supposed to be doing. Like, I read it multiple times and I'm like, this sounds like it's going to do something, and then it just doesn't. Like, I tried it on like so many different progression points on my Wander, whether it was like League Start gear that sucked or like the final int stack I had. It just fucking did nothing. I couldn't even clear packs like without. It took me like literally 10 seconds to clear some packs because it seems like it's not doing anything. Like, my character had like 70 million DPS or something, and I can't clear a fucking pack of monsters in red map. It's just, it's so stupid. I don't understand what the skill's doing. But I don't know. I haven't seen anyone talk about it, and I think I know why. It's just like the skill doesn't do anything. And so that's the end of the bad section. So if you are at this point like, wait, there's like a lot of stuff that got added to the game that you haven't mentioned yet. Yeah, a lot of changes that have happened that I didn't mention yet, because the majority of this video is in the ugly. So before I even start with it, I just want to mention that this section had the absolutely highest impact on how I felt about the league overall. And it's more than likely that you feel the same. The changes made in this section, I genuinely believe, are blatant misreads and bad judgment calls on PoE, and more specifically the endgame of PoE. I cannot remember a time in the last few years that they blundered this hard and made the game worse for every single player. I love you, GGG, but these type of things need to just never happen again. I am serious in saying that it's just unacceptable. You would have such a hard time finding somebody that thinks these changes are good for the game, and if 99% of your player base say that the game is worse off with the changes, it is. It doesn't matter what the theory is, it doesn't matter about the philosophical reasons to make the changes are, they were bad, and they should just be undone. This is not like the Expedition Flask rework I mentioned earlier. These changes are bad, and it's seriously not debatable. So, I will start with the most serious offender here. The Tier 17 modifier increased item rarity and quantity value nerfs. They essentially turned Tier 17 modifiers into only slightly better than normal map modifiers when it comes to scaling the loot with item quantity and rarity. And this makes no sense, and it literally came out of nowhere. Anyone who played last league, or even just looked at like mass economic data around what strategy people are running, you would be able to identify the obvious state of the endgame. There were 3 strategies that were complete outliers that outperformed the 4th best strategy by nearly double the profit per hour. And these strategies were obviously the Abyss Horde, Blight Bosses, and the Alva Incursions with the Evolving Shrine. The next best performer was Strongboxes. And where Abyss Hordes generally would pull out like 25 to 30 D an hour, Strongboxes would pull in 15 to 20. So you're talking about those top 3 pulling in 25 to 30 versus the next best being 15 to 20. Okay, we clearly have identified one of the issues, or maybe the only issue. It's possible, but let's just say one of them. These three strategies are clearly doing something that the other ones aren't, and taking advantage of something that the other ones aren't. And that is risk scarabs, which I will now talk about next. But before I do, I just want to quickly mention that, yes, those strategies were too good. They just were, and they should have been brought down, of course. Or other things should have been brought up, but I think bringing down would have been much more reasonable because those things were like way better than any strat in the past. I want to mention that just because they were overpowered doesn't mean that the gameplay was bad, right? Like, this isn't Affliction League, where Affliction League was all just about literally having as much pack size as possible and just scaling with the Affliction mechanic itself. That's dogshit gameplay, I would argue. It's still fine. People are still going to have a lot of fun playing it because everything's dropping a lot of items and you're killing a lot of monsters. But in this case, it's like, no, the gameplay loops were fine. Like, Blight was kind of cancer, but people loved doing Alva. It was satisfying. It was like an explosion headhunter type of strategy, and that's always really fun. Abyss Hordes is obviously really fun because you're just clicking all these little boxes, like loot boxes throughout the whole map, and they just drop you a bunch of items, and people are having fun. It's like you compare that to this league's biggest strategy, which is better than every single other one, which is the Ambush of Containment Strongbox strat, which again was the next best one last league too. That strategy is so boring, dude. Like, there's no strategies this league that are fun. So, like, sure, you can nerf the numbers, but don't, like, completely remove the strategy entirely, because we were having fun doing it. But yeah, so next I want to mention, like, what they did to the Abyss Horde Scarab and the Risk Scarab is the next issue here. So I didn't mention it yet. Well, I did, but the second conclusion you would have come to after the three strategies being OP would have been looking at the Risk Scarabs. Because those three strategies took advantage of Risk Scarabs better than all of the other ones. And that is one of the biggest reasons that they were so strong. Okay, so if you take Risk Scarab out of the game, those strategies would have literally been like perfectly in line with Strongbox drops. Like, they would have been balanced if you just removed risks from the game. If you would have reworked what risks do, it is the obvious solution to last league's issues. If you did that one change, those strategies would no longer be overpowered. They would just be good and they would be fun. That's all they would have had to do. Literally, that is the only endgame change they would have to do to make things balanced this league. Unironically, this is not some exaggeration, and it's not even an opinion. It's just genuinely where it would have ended up. Right? So, end of story. Like, strong boxes, 15-20D an hour, right? Essences, if you have a really fast character, 15 to 20D an hour. Literally, it's the same as that. If you're a ritual player, like, those people make that. Ultimatum people make that money. Delve can make that much money if you're deep delving and you're really fast. Like, that is the good spot. Like, 15 to 20D an hour right now is the good spot. It's where the harvest is like that as well, if you do, like, the Giga Harvest. So, when you bring down those three outliers to being in that same region, then it's perfect. That's literally balanced. That's balanced. That's what it's supposed to be. So, but instead they didn't do that. Instead they just made the Risk Scarab do one thing, which is just, well, it just does the same thing, but it's like you can only use one of them, which is dumb because that change didn't actually need to happen because they chose to take the other route of, like, basically removing the three other strategies. Like, this is what doesn't make sense about this trifecta of nerfs. Whether you're talking, like, you're taking the item rarity and quantity out of the T17 modifiers, and you're deciding that the Abyss, Blight, and Alva strats don't get to, like, their scarabs suck now or were completely changed, and you decided to do their Risk Scarab nerf. Like, only one of these things needed to happen. Only one of them. You could have picked any three and it would have been, well, no, not the 217 modifier nerfs. That one's not acceptable at all. But, like, choosing to rework the scarabs of the three strats or choosing to remove or whatever the Risk Scarab would have solved the issue, period. You didn't need to do three, you needed to do one. And the T17 one is just completely ridiculous. T17's modifiers are the hardest in the game, and they should be rewarding you for that. And yes, they still do, like, the more currency and whatnot, but you have to remember that more currency, it's multiplicative of the increase. So when you nerf the T17, increased rarity and quantity nerfs massively, by the way. It's like a really big deal. I don't know what the percentage was, but like they're shit as fuck. Like they're not good. Once you do that, you're also nerfing the more stuff by the same amount, basically. So it's dumb. It was a stupid change. Nobody thought that T17 modifiers were overpowered. Nobody thought that. That was nobody's conclusion. Not a single person. The only thing we had to say about T17 modifiers is that they were annoying, right? And they did a little bit to address that with like the fault of core change and a couple things, but like they left all the really annoying shit that we don't want in the game, like the no damage mod type stuff. So the point is, between these things, like these are the biggest things about the league. This economic change that they've done and the end game change that they've done here, it is absolutely the worst thing about the league. And it literally, like, if this is a rating out of 10 type of situation, the economic change and end game change literally takes it down by fucking 5 points. Like, if this league would have been a 10, except for those changes, then it would have been a 5 because of those changes. Like, that's how bad it is. Like, they just fucking ruined the end game for everybody. Genuinely, like, even though it's playable and like people are having fun and I had fun playing still, there's so many people who didn't have fun. Like, the player retention is speaking for itself. The only league that's done worse is Necropolis, but here's the thing about that. Necropolis, people left because they thought that it was bad. But the truth is they just didn't, they needed to stick around a little bit longer to see what was actually going on. I think a lot of it also was people just did not fuck with the graveyard crafting, which I can understand, but I liked it a lot. But Necropolis was not a bad league. There was just there was too much trust in people like Fubgun and MP, saying that like Magic Finding's dead and so the league is dead type situation, because that's when they got rid of item rarity or item quantity on items and all this stuff. Literally, the Necropolis retention was probably going to be the worst in a long time anyway, but it got so low that it was ridiculous. Keepers of the Flame, it got low. Like, the player retention for Keepers of the Flame has basically nothing to do with people's opinions at the top. Yes, they echoed the same sentiments, but at the same time, every single person felt these changes. These are actual real changes that affected every single person playing the game. So it's a genuine loss in retention that's actually data that you can use to tell you what players thought about the changes you made. So it speaks for itself, and that's all I have to say about the economic changes and the end game changes. Absolutely massive L. Do not fucking ever pull that off again. And honestly, I swear to God, just undo the changes. Just undo them. Like, we did not ask for this. We think it sucks. Undo them. You should have undid it in like on day 3. Like, you should have done it so soon. Like, the changes were bad and it took like 24 hours for people to realize they were bad. Let's move on. There's only a couple more things. Well, just one thing actually, but I could have thought of more things to put in here, but honestly, it's kind of depressing, but we'll get there. So, the breach mechanic. Save the mechanic for last. I mentioned earlier that I don't, and you shouldn't, get mad at GGG for taking risks. The economy changes that I just mentioned are an exception because of just how blatantly bad the changes are for the game. I am, and you should be, mad at them for those changes. But breach, on the other hand, is just a risk that did not pay off at all. So don't be mad at them for the breach. Honestly, it like, they tried something new and it just completely blundered. But some of you might think the mechanic is better than I think, but I think it's complete blunder. Biggest problem is that it replaces the old breach. That's problem number 1, and that's the core issue, and it's what everybody was worried about. Like, they replaced a mechanic that nobody asked changes for. We all liked breach. Breach was fine. They even made like some quality of life changes over the years where breach is like so comfy to run, and worked on the new originator maps like really well. Like, it was at its peak. Like, it was so fun. So that was problem number 1. They removed it. Problem number 2 is the walls. I don't know who at GGG decided that the walls should be there, let alone work, or like they should work like they do, let alone even being there in the first place. That should have never made it in the game. It's so stupid. Like, seriously, I want to know who thought of that, because they shouldn't be they should not be in charge of these. Like, whoever decided that was going to be a thing should not have the power to make that decision, because they don't understand the game at all, and they don't understand what we want. that those walls are so stupid. Like, what does it actually do? What do those walls actually do? Because if you want to say that the argument is that it makes the encounters unique each time in some way, or like where the monsters are coming from, do you really think we give a fuck? Like, do you actually think that we give a fuck about that? Like, we thought Breach was great, but we just killed monsters in a circle. Why the fuck do we care where they come from? Like, that's the entire purpose of the walls, is where they're coming from, to try to give some kind of variety. And it's so fucking stupid. Who cares? And so what you have is you have these walls that do not fall down instantly. You should literally just be able to phase through them if they were going to, like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, it's so clunky and annoying. And they're so big. It's just literally stupid. I don't, why is it in the game? Like, no, don't ever do this shit again. Yeah, so that's problem number 2, the walls, which I'm sure every single person agrees with everything I just said. And the next problem is the Hive Fortress. Now, I think the biggest core issue with the Hive Fortresses is that they're worth doing, because they're barely worth doing. And it goes back to the Genesis tree, by the way. It's always going to go back to the Genesis tree when it comes to these things not being worth your time. They would be worth your time if the Genesis tree didn't exist, as in, like, ground loot. But because the Genesis tree exists, graft blood is important because it does generate a lot of money. And so what you end up having to do is you have to run these Hive Fortresses because they give so much graft blood. And you're not even doing it for the fun part, which is like the loot drops, which can be okay on Super Juice T17 maps, but nothing that you would actually stop, if it weren't for graft blood, to do while you're running your normal strategies. So what that means is you get a Hive Fortress, which has walls, by the way, before you walk in. And then you go in, you have to navigate this really annoyingly long and stupid, like, detours all over the place zone just to get to the center, while also clicking on those chests. You have to find all the chests first, or else you're being inefficient. Then you go to the center, and you fucking sit there in the center for 4 minutes, just sitting there, doing nothing, with your dick in your hand, just for graft blood. And then you have to fucking, like, take the stupid route on the way out, too. Like, they just made it even more annoying. It's so stupid. I just... Like, the game has been developed for 15 years. How do you not know these things yet? How do you not understand that we don't want things like this? Like, what are you doing? Breach mechanic is so stupid. The stabilizing breach thing is fine, obviously, because it's just like old breach, basically. And it, like, layers with other map mechanics, like delirium and stuff like that. But, ugh. These, like, defense ones are so dumb. And the walls are so stupid. Like, I just... But this is also another thing. This is another thing in the list that's being PoE 2ified. Like, that's a PoE 2 type mechanic, right? Like, that would work in PoE 2 a lot better because the gameplay is slow in comparison, and it just makes more sense for that game. It's just, PoE 1 is solved, dude. We don't need these kind of things. It doesn't make sense. So it was a bad risk to take, but again, I still respect them for trying it. It's just like, wow, the execution was really bad. You could have done a lot better. But anyway, yeah, that's the breach mechanic, and I'll just close this video out now. There was probably a lot more things that I could have brought up, but honestly, at a certain point, it's getting depressing to even talk about it, because it's just a bunch of negative stuff, and I don't like being negative with PoE. Regardless, the PoE 2 Druid expansion reveal happened yesterday, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm getting pretty concerned about that game. Like, if PoE 2's ultimate goal is to become a very different game to PoE 1, that's fine. But what I don't accept is that path and that those design choices are trickling down into PoE 1. Okay, and that's not okay. PoE 1, if you decide, like, you decided at some point that these will be separate games because PoE 1's like the fallback plan, essentially, and PoE 1 players will keep their games. Stop doing stuff that's from PoE 2. It doesn't, just because people are enjoying it in PoE 2 does not mean that it's good for PoE 1. Stop doing this. Design philosophy for PoE 2 need to stay the fuck away from PoE 1. And it's very clear to me that it's working its way into PoE 1. It needs to stop right now. It's just, I don't know, like, what's the thought process here? Why are you doing that? But anyway, so this is a depressing league for me. And I'll just sort of like lay out a point here that is message. It's directed at GGG directly, and anyone with a voice to echo this, if you feel the same way, please do. Just please, GGG, accept the things that we love about PoE1. When the absolute vast majority of players, and I'm talking over 90% of the player base, maybe 95, 99, I don't know, it's way over 90, I think that's gotta be true, are feeling the same way about the changes that you made. If they decide there's a bad change, you need to undo the change. You just need to accept that. I'm serious. GGG, you have to accept that. Because that is the current scenario. And the path we're heading on is really bad. And PoE1 will become a dying game. So if you want to continue on the path and you can't see that this would be a bad path, I'd be very surprised if you couldn't. I do trust you to see this. The game will become a dying game. It will be on a negative trajectory for the end of time if you keep deciding that PoE2 should be in PoE1. PoE1 is a solved game. We know what we want. But I love all of you as GGG. I genuinely do. And I know that you... I trust that you will come to the right decision here. But let's not wait. Do it as soon as possible. AKA 3.28. Literally just undo the economy and endgame changes you made. With the exception, don't, like keep those three strategies in line again. Don't just bring them back to where they were before. But it's just an effortless, easy W, and everybody wants it. So, you just got to start doing those kinds of things now. This is not PoE1 is no longer a game that you need to be catering to anyone that isn't just PoE1 players, and just accept that seriously. I thought we already did. I'm gonna be honest. I thought we'd already accepted that because it's been a long time since we've had stupid changes like this, but apparently not. So anyway, that's the league review. I might be playing PoE2. I might not with the upcoming thing. If I am, there will be content on that, of course. But for now, let's just hope for the best with 328.